Hi, this is Karma, your sustainable podcast. I'm Lena, and today I will speak with Ryan from Frazier Global and Purple Report. Have fun!
How did I get here again?
Hi, Ryan. Welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Lena. It's great to be with you.
Can you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hey, Ryan Frazier, and I am the CEO and managing principal of my own management consulting and ESG advisory firm called Frazier Global. I'm also the founder of Purple Report, which is a ESG market research and public survey company. And so the two go kind of hand in hand, and they're both tied to our efforts to help companies, investment groups, and governments address their sustainability journey and ESG risk factors and opportunities linked to their financial performance, cost of capital, value creation, ultimately impacts on society. But just a quick background on me that might also be helpful. I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, which happens to also be the hometown of someone many of your viewers and listeners may know of. His name is Michael Jordan, the basketball superstar. We come from the same hometown, but these days I live in Denver, Colorado, but I travel all over the place. And so served some time in the United States military. I worked in corporate America. About 11 years ago, I started Frazier Global. And so we've just been building the business. Oh, I've also spent some time in public office as well. So I don't know if you can do that background about me, but I've served as 8 years as a local city councilman for the third largest city in Colorado. It's called Aurora, Colorado. So a little bit of my background, family, kids, all that good stuff as well. And so very passionate, purpose-driven person who wants to do my part to hopefully make our community, our people, this planet a little bit better by the time that we leave it to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren.
Yeah, sounds great. So you said it already. You are the CEO and managing principal of Frazier Global, and you found Purple Report. Could you tell us a little bit more what you are doing there?
Yeah, so Frazier Global and Purple Report, two separate companies. As Frazier Global, I basically run the company. I have a team of experts and advisors who work with investment groups, who work with governments, who work with corporations to help them develop and integrate ESG strategies, sustainable business strategies, tied to key performance metrics that are relevant to their industry or to their communities. And so that's the core focus at Frazier Global. We do some other wraparound services under the management consulting general umbrella in terms of advisory services for different groups. But that's the extent of Frazier Global. It's actually the core part of my business is Frazier Global in terms of the advisory consulting work we do for those clients. And we do it investment groups, governments, companies all over, primarily the US at this point. We hope to go international at some point, Lena. But with respect to Purple Report, that is really something that I started about 7-8 months ago, actually. And it's linked to the work I do at Frazier Global with ESG. Because what I found, Lena, is that when I would be talking with leaders of companies and asset managers and other government leaders, or anyone in this whole ESG space as it's rapidly evolved, that we would have these discussions about what was most important, and we would have sometimes debates, intellectual debates about ESG, and I kept coming back to, well, my mom's my hero. Right. and so I kept coming back to, like, what would my mom say? My mom raised 3 boys on her own. My father left when I was 7 years old. So mom truly is my hero. And, but she's not involved with sustainability per se. She doesn't do this day to day. She doesn't work in corporate America. My mom, worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to raise us. But, she's a stakeholder. And her views and her opinions and her perspective are important. And there are a lot of people like my mom all around the US, all around Germany, all around the world, who who should influence the sustainability risk and opportunities. And so the goal with Purple Report was really to take a approach to gather stakeholder, community, public sentiment as it relates to certain ESG factors based on the industry that these companies or investment groups were involved in, or governments in the communities that they served, to get their take on, how important some of these sustainability risks and opportunities were to them. And so that was kind of what drove me to start the Purple Report. And so we've done a few Purple Reports so far. We got a lot more we're planning to do in the months and years ahead for different stakeholders. And so that's a little bit about Frazier Global and Purple Report.
Yeah, sounds really interesting. So you said you started Purple Report just 7 to 8 months ago. And why is it called Purple Report?
Well, in part, I think purple is a great color.
Yes, of course.
I guess, we have these discussions about, green this or blue that. And I got to thinking that the goal of Purple Report is not to quote unquote take a side. It's really to understand people's views, where they're at right now, and perhaps where they're headed. And so purple really is, for me, represents a bit of neutrality. In other words, we're not trying to advocate a position per se. We want to reflect the views and opinions of different stakeholders so that can be used to shape sustainability risk and opportunity profiles for different companies, industries, and governments, and as I said, investment groups as well. And so Purple Report is really designed to show that this isn't a partisan organization. This isn't about politics. This isn't about taking quote unquote a side. It's about representing the views of the stakeholders, because there are so many different opinions. We're not always going to agree on different things, but that's what's great, is that we can understand different viewpoints and use that to shape the sustainability, solutions that companies and investment groups and governments can leverage for people and their communities and the planet.
Okay, so you talked a little bit already about the ESG. What trends are you seeing with ESG?
Well, we're seeing a number of trends. I mean, one, we're seeing fairly rapid adoption of ESG. And it's not government necessarily who's driving it. It's really the investment community, the investors who are driving a lot of the adoption. And it's really interesting to see how fast it's picking up in terms of people being interested in using ESG to help them shape their investment portfolios, or to help them put in place better strategies within their company to help address some of the needs in the communities that they operate and serve. One of the things that's really interesting, Lena, is that in 1975, when you looked at the valuation of a company, that was 47 years ago. When you looked at the valuation of a company, approximately 83% on average of a company's valuation was tied to tangible assets. In other words, buildings, computer equipment. You fast forward to today. This is according to a study by Ocean Tomo. That number is completely flipped. Now we have, on average, nearly 90% of a company's valuation is tied to intangible assets, meaning things like your IP, your brand value, your customer loyalty, the list goes on. And this is one of the reasons that ESG is becoming so much more important, and it's linked to value creation, is that more so than it ever been, it's ultimately affecting a company's long-term value, and thus financial performance, cost of capital. All those implications are now much more of a higher priority, and they're increasingly linked to ESG factors. And for folks who may watch this, there's a range of ESG factors, right? And E for the environment. So it's not just your greenhouse gas emissions, which it includes, right? It's your other energy practices here, your water consumption, your waste management practices. Under the S, you have everything from diversity and inclusion to data security, which not a lot of folks tend to recognize is actually an S issue. There are other issues under the G that include everything from business ethics to supply chain management, supplier diversity, systemic risk approach. So there are all these ESG factors that increasingly today are being used to drive value creation and affect financial performance more so today than they ever have. And that's why I think ESG is seeing such big time adoption.
Yeah, just that we have it once, maybe not everybody knows ESG. Can you say for what ESG is stand? It's
Yes, it can be so. It can still be somewhat esoteric for a lot
yes.
of people. So ESG stands for environmental, social, governance,
Yes.
and these are three key risk and opportunity factors. Again, that can be linked to a company, investment, or government's financial performance, value creation, your cost of capital, but also the impacts you have on people, communities.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, maybe we can come back to Purple Report. For who you are working and what is a typical client?
Yeah, Lena, we're working for a range of folks. We have everything from just investors who are looking at a particular industry or a space, and they want to have a better sense of some of the risks and opportunities as it relates to stakeholders, public stakeholders in those industries. So, and I know maybe we'll get into this a little bit later. I had a big crypto currency Bitcoin investor who asked us to do a Bitcoin ESG Purple Report survey. But we also have other like industry associations that we work with. We did another Purple Report on the alcoholic beverages industry. Yeah, where we went out and talked to people about sustainability and some of the ESG factors that are important or not important to them that can help the industry associations and their member companies understand some of the risks and opportunities they're facing with respect to sustainability going forward. But we also, have broader stakeholders like governments who are interested in understanding what their constituents or residents think about regulations, what they think about other practices in an effort to, for instance, reduce their carbon footprint or, take more of a proactive approach to how they address diversity within their workforce, or how they're ultimately providing better health and safety practices for their employees within the organization. So we have a range of companies and investment groups and governments that we are either working with or are planning to work with to provide them, Purple reports. And sometimes, Lena, we'll also just we'll just do them for our own purposes, of providing, market research and public sentiment data to the broader universe of people who may be interested. So sometimes we just do it and put it out there on the purplereport.org for people to go check out and read and understand what certain stakeholders are saying about ESG factors.
And how and from where do you get your data?
Yeah. So the way the Purple reports work, there's different mechanisms to go out and talk to different stakeholders. So most people are familiar with polling or surveying, and we use some of those very similar methodologies where we are able to either use telephones or text messages to reach out to a broad universe of stakeholders. Let's just say we want to talk to people in Colorado, right? And so we could just specifically target people in Colorado who happen to drink beer, right? And so we would go talk to beer drinkers in Colorado, and we could either text them or we could call them via phone, and we ask them a list of questions that we've developed, typically in conjunction with the client, to around ESG factors. But we've also taken to using an online platform that allows us to more cost effectively reach a lot of stakeholders to get their views. And a great example is the Bitcoin survey, where we actually used an online platform. We went out and we talked to 1,001 people in the US, and we asked them about 30 questions around Bitcoin tied to environmental, social, governance factors. So those are different mechanisms we use, but ultimately it's about targeting to determine who exactly do you want to survey and get their opinions and views on. And so, again, it could be in Denmark, and we have the capability to do pretty much anywhere in the world, to go in and tell the systems who exactly we want to talk to. And it reaches out to those folks.
And can you tell me a little bit about the National Bitcoin ESG Survey report?
Yeah, this is a really interesting survey we did a few months back now, but it's just as relevant today as it was then, and I think it's going to be relevant a year from now, because I think it really speaks to some of the trends. Now, this survey was a completely online survey, and we talked to 1,001 U.S. participants, and we found some really interesting feedback. For instance, we found that 71% of people surveyed in the U.S. support stricter regulations of the Bitcoin market, which is really interesting if you think about the origins of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in terms of a deregulated, decentralized kind of environment that really attracted a lot of people. But 71% of those that we surveyed said, yeah, they want stricter regulations. 64% said they're likely to purchase or invest in Bitcoin with more federal regulation. Again, not necessarily a surprise, but I was a little bit like, okay, that's a higher number than I thought it would actually be. But some other interesting data, Lena, 72% expressed concern about Bitcoin being used for illicit activities. So there's still some concern that cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin in particular, could be used for unlawful purposes. A couple other things. 75% believe that Bitcoin will eventually be an acceptable form of payment around the US, which I think is very, very, very telling. Reminiscent of the gold rush, mining for Bitcoin mining, is something that was also viewed by a lot of folks. A great number of people, 78%, felt that it is important to mine for Bitcoin using renewable energy. We hear that debate going on right now about, the impact of Bitcoin on using fossil fuels. Well, 78% of participants said they think that they should use more renewable energy. And in many cases, over 50% said that they'd be willing to pay a slight premium for Bitcoin that was mined using renewable energy. So a lot of really interesting statistics and data from this survey. I think critically, in our analysis, 2/3 believing that Bitcoin could eventually be a widely accepted means of payment and a savings option. I think this holds the most significant implications for the long-term outlook for Bitcoin, at least in the US and perhaps around the world.
Yeah. So who is using the data from your surveys and for what?
Yeah, well, first off, anybody who goes to purplereport.org and it can use that data. It's available to you now. You can download it.
To everybody.
Everybody can use it. Anything that's available on that site is publicly available. Now, for certain clients that we work with who commission a Purple Report, they may not want that data publicly available. They may want it for themselves, for their purposes. And so, that certainly can happen and is something that we respect if they're commissioning the work that we're doing on their behalf, Lena. But we do make it a point to try and stress we want this to be available. Our goal long term with Purple Report is to really build up the database. Right now it's in its infancy, and we hope that over the next several years, as we collect more data and we talk to more stakeholders, that we can have a database that is available to anyone who wants to go on and check it out and see what the trends are over time. Now, some of it could be behind a paywall, right? Because ultimately, this Purple Report is a for-profit entity. But that said, we want to make a good portion of that data just available to anyone who wants to check it out. But that database is where we want to get at, and we'll have a range of clients and other stakeholders who will have access to that information.
So do you only cover ESG topics?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's kind of the niche with Purple Report is we're focused on environmental, social governance factors based on the industry or in general, depending on the focus of the survey. I didn't want this Purple Report to become a political tool in the sense of, who's going to win the next election in the U.S., Biden or Trump? I don't want that. That's not the point of this Purple Report. Purple Report is really to focus on industry related ESG factors and what public stakeholders think or how they view some of these factors. How important is it to shaping their decision to purchase, their decision to make investment? What are the things that they care about that companies, investment groups, and governments need to know when they're looking at their sustainability risk and opportunities? And that's really the focus of Purple Report.
Okay. So what are your plans for 2022 for Frazier Global and also for Purple Report?
Yeah, well, the plan is to get just so darn busy that we're just really helping and supporting our clients and the communities in which we operate and serve. Lena, we have a lot of interest that we've been getting from people all across the U.S. We've got some international interest as well. I had some folks out of Tokyo reach out, and we hope to continue to expand our business over the year plus ahead to do more work, both on the advisory side, helping companies and governments and investment groups understand how to integrate environmental social governance factors into their strategic plans, and linking those to key performance metrics that ultimately drive financial performance. But also, with the Purple Report, using the Purple Reports to help inform that work that we're doing with clients. So providing that stakeholder sentiment data on behalf of the clients that we're serving is a big part of the plan for us going forward. So we're super revved up about the months and years ahead. I tell you that this adoption of ESG is it's only going to continue to grow. And I think that as more and more people realize the impacts on people, on planet, on the economy that ESG factors have, more and more folks are going to be thinking about, how does it apply to me? How does it apply to my company? How does it apply to my community? And one thing I like to tell folks, Lena, is that, and this is a great way, I think, to explain ESG. And so when we think about sustainability, which I know is a core focus for this podcast with you, many people think primarily of environmental sustainability.
Yes.
And I have a broader view. And I think that's what you're also seeing is there's a bigger, broader view of sustainability. And that is sustainability, as I define it, and as a great many people are defining it more and more, is the evolution of long-term value creation for people, planet, and the economy. And so if sustainability is the journey that we're on, then ESG, environmental social governance, is how we measure progress. And that's kind of a key distinction for, I think, your listeners and viewers to understand, is that ESG is about measuring our progress on these factors along the sustainability journey. And so we intend to be a big part of that here in the US and other parts of the world. And so to anybody who's looking to learn or to integrate ESG, we would love to chat with them. And if they're interested in understanding their stakeholder sentiment around ESG factors, the Purple Report will be a great vehicle to help them understand that.
Yes, of course. So I have a question back to sustainability. And what are you doing in your office or also in private to be more sustainable? I mean, also to, I don't know, go with the ESG factor in this office and private as well, maybe?
Yeah, we do a few things internally now. So, these days we're being a little more intentional about our travel. Yeah. I love to travel. It's one thing that I want to go to Berlin. I want to travel this world. So I can't say we're doing no travel, but we're being more intentional about our travel. And so we still anticipate to travel, probably not as much. And so that's one thing that we're looking at. We do simple things like, we recycle around the office. Yeah, basic little things like that. We try to use sustainable materials. So when we can, we use like paper cups for coffee and things that can be, both easily recyclable and just a little more planet friendly, if you will. So we do little things, and I think that's what's important for folks to remember. Is there a lot of little things you can do? We turn off the lights, to conserve energy. When we're not in a room. So we just do little basic things. Now, mind you, we're not a big corporation at Frazier Global or Purple Report. We're not some huge conglomerate, but as a business that is growing, we feel there are little practices we can take that help to make us a little more environmentally friendly and support our workforce. And that's the other thing. Again, sustainability is about your people. We take care of our people. We make sure that we compensate them well. We make sure we take steps to support their health, as both their physical health and their mental health. And we also have just good governance practices that we try to employ to run a very ethical business in terms of our approach with our clients as well. So again, looking at sustainability more broadly, we do a lot of little things that we think add up to a very sustainable business.
Yeah, that's right. So do you have at the end any tips or something to say for my audience?
Yeah, learn is more about ESG and think about how you can apply it to your business, maybe to your home. Again, what are those environmental practices that you can take to become more energy efficient? How can you better conserve your water, use, waste management, whether it be composting or recycling or whatever, what are some of the things you can do on the social side? How can you be more aware of diversity and inclusion issues, and people who come from different backgrounds or perhaps don't look like you? How can you be more open and inclusive in that respect? Data security, make sure you're taking steps to protect yourself from cyber attacks. There's just things that you can do. But most importantly, I would suggest to folks, check out, get to know more about environmental social governance, where it's going, how it's impacting the sustainability journey, how it's influencing companies and investment groups and governments, because it's going to be a bigger and bigger deal. Regulators are starting to swiftly catch up. Like I said at the outset, investors have been driving a lot of the ESG discussion, but companies are quickly adopting it, and the regulators are taking steps to look at their role. And so that's going to happen both here in the US with the SEC, but also in the European Union and other parts of the world. They're taking steps to, because the regulators see this as financially material to investment decisions and impacts on communities. And so they are increasingly of the mindset that they have a role to protecting both investors as well as the community. And so you're going to see more of that. So get to know more about ESG. Most importantly, understand what's most relevant. And this is a key distinction, Lena. Not every ESG issue is going to be necessarily important to you or your business.
Yeah.
Right. So understand what's most important, what's most financially material, because those are the things you can focus on. You can't boil the ocean, but you can focus on those factors that are the most important to you, whether it be personally or whether it be in business. And I would highly recommend they take time to think about that. Yeah.
Sounds great. And if you're interested, have a look on Purple Report on the different surveys, or also on Frazier Global.
purplereport.org and FrazierGlobal.com.
Yes. Okay, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lena. It's great to be with you.
To speak with you. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
How did I get here again?
Do you like my podcast? Then please subscribe.